From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher. Their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicky Fisher. Our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Scripchuk. And our Batman, the master of tools, gadgets, and all things mechanical, our mild-mannered soon-to-be billionaire, Alan Danvers. Their mission, to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them, and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
All right, welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training podcast. I'm going to be your host for this episode, and my name is Bill. Who do we have hosting?
I'm Vicky.
I'm Jennifer.
And we don't have Alan because he didn't schedule for it, but that's okay. We have a guest with us, somebody who actually was at the first HPDE of the year with me at Mid-Ohio 2 weeks ago, it seems. He's started with NASA as an HPDE student, I believe, in around 2005. He is the chief instructor for NASA Great Lakes since around 2013. He's not just an instructor, though. He has raced in Grand Am World Challenge and touring cars. And, you know, he's one of those guys that takes care of his students and definitely believes that lapping is not the same thing as learning. And one of the truly good guys that I've met racing, and we'd like to welcome Eric Meyer to the podcast.
Outstanding. I'm excited, guys. I'm super excited.
All right. Well, you never lack for enthusiasm, so we'll take it. The hard part is actually trying to catch you when you're at a HPDE. So
Yeah.
So I'd hate to see your Fitbit because I'm sure it's in the multi-million steps by the time you're done.
We understand you're through the HPDEs from NASA. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and our listeners? About who you are, what is your role within NASA, and how you basically got into it?
Sure. I'm currently 55, and about 15 years ago, I was fortunate enough to sell a company, and I didn't have any hobbies. And my fiance at the time was tired of me hanging around her house. She said, "Go find a hobby," and I didn't play golf. And one of my best friends said, "Hey, let's go do this." He'd been bugging me for maybe like a year or so, and we went to Putnam Park, and I fell in love. And I asked the promoter, and his name is Lee Grimes, and Lee runs Coney Dampers Motorsports, their motorsport division in North America. And I said, "Lee, what's my next step?" He goes, "Go to NASA." And many years later, here we are, right? Doing a podcast, doing a Zoom. So you want to know in between, or you guide the conversation if you like.
Yeah. Well, how did you, so have you ever raced before? I mean, before we get into the whole NASA thing, I'm going to kind of get to understand you a little bit, and then we'll kind of go in. But have you ever raced a vehicle before your to-be wife kicked you out? I said, go get a hobby.
Yeah. I wasn't a stick and ball sports kind of person growing up. I was the skateboarder with the ramps and BMX racer. I got pretty good. I was fourth in the nation one year, and in my very late teens, I was pretty athletic, and had some friends that had a lake cottage, and we would do a lot of, barefoot water skiing and all those kind of things, but I didn't have a boat. So was always doing sort of kind of the extreme sports before they were extreme, and did a lot of bicycle racing for several years. And so no motorsports, parents wouldn't let me get a motorcycle, right? Mom said, "Well, you can have a mini bike in the Sears catalog." And that was like ridiculous, right? It looked like total dorky. So I never had one, and fiddled around with cars, swapped engines, and played with big V8 cars, and learned how to brake them and all that kind of stuff. But quite frankly, when I fell into the sport, I was like, wow, look what happens. And I just started learning. I started like everybody else, fell into it and said, how does this work?
So what did you show up with?
A skateboard.
The mini bike from Sears.
It was April of, I think, 2004, and I had an E-Class Mercedes AMG, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I had a ton of power, and no driver talent, and you didn't have any instructors. It was just pure lapping, and that 4,000-pound sled ended up, I think it was about a $4,000 bill at the dealer, because we ruined both the rear tires, corded the front left, needed a new front brake caliper, and brake flush and all that. Of course, it's Mercedes, so everything's double. So it was a $4,000 track day welcome.
Wow. And you've learned since then that you need to do things to your car before you show up to the racetrack.
Well, no, nobody really told me. You know, it was I just would go 100%, and I would jam on the brakes as hard as I can, and then I'd go floor it, and of course it'd do a burnout. And there was only like 5 people on the track, and it was really cold. That was April at Putnam Park, 2004, I think. Quite fun. And I said, you know, there's got to be a better way to do this, and kind of fell into the NASA system. I went to every event I could find after that, because I didn't play golf, and it was in the spring, and my fiance was like, get out of the house. So I started going to every single event. I think that year I went to 16 events.
Wow. Really? In just that one year?
Yeah. I found out you can go south. So I would go south where it was warmer. So did every one that we could, and the traditional lapping days. Met the folks that did some autocross, mostly NASA. Went to some other NASA regions, NASA Mid-Atlantic, NASA Southeast. Of course, they run almost year-round. Went to NASA Florida that year a few times. You can actually run at Homestead all the way down there by Key West. I mean, it's just a stone's throw from Key West. They run year-round. Almost not in the summertime. It's so hot. So
wow.
So got the bug, learned all the ways not to do it. Had really, honestly, no instruction along the way. Like, none.
Well, it seems like you might not have had bad habits to start with. You just went in not knowing completely.
He had expensive
Vicki,
habits.
I had every bad habit times 10. Honestly, 100%. And Ross Bentley, who's a great friend, often says this. People become instructors because they had a good experience. People become instructors because they had a bad experience. And I really had a bad experience. I can remember asking people questions. How do you do this? And getting blanks, blank stares. Nothing. Honestly, I'm 100% serious. And another friend of mine who was a chief instructor, he was the NASA Great Lakes chief instructor, Dan Fargo. We came up through the ranks, HPD2, HPD3, HPD4, Spec Miata, came up through the ranks. And he became he jumped to chief instructor while I went and learned how to do the pro racing thing, get my butt kicked, and then figure out how to not get my butt kicked. A couple years and a couple bucks.
Yeah. made the $5,000 seem a lot cheaper, I'm sure.
Oh, you don't even know.
So we covered a little bit about your racing history, and is there anything left on the list? Is there any bucket items, besides, seeing everybody progress through their HPDE careers, which seems to be a passion of yours?
Wow, that is one of the best questions anybody has asked me, because I'm thinking it's quite frankly, it's organically growing, the career opportunities or the direction. I'm doing more give back and trying to do some legacy planning. How do you help the industry raise the bar, be more safe, create more education? So I'm spending a lot of time on that. That's a whole vein that we could go down and talk about. But I would say for the most part, the most rewarding thing that's happening lately is seeing students. It's probably like a teacher who gets to see their elementary school students like graduate from college. And that's in the form of a lot of folks ended up on the NASA championships podium in 2019. And I was like, man, I remember your first day at the track. Look at you now. I'm so proud of you. So it was pretty neat. You do a lot of hugs and high fives and neat stuff. Really, really neat. It's rewarding.
So I've been looking at I have participated in the Great Lakes. I went to Watkins Glen.
No, Northeast.
Was that Northeast?
Yes. We've been trying to get you to go to Great Lakes. You missed Pittsburgh last year.
They're all good, and the Glen's awesome, isn't it? Isn't it wonderful?
Well, yeah. Well,
I like that track.
yeah, I did. So
Not
what I've
everybody.
noticed about the difference between the NASA versus the other HPDEs is that you guys have developed a progression in your technique. So you go into with 3 classes, 1, 2, and 3. And then what I thought was ingenious was the booklet. So it wasn't so much about turning laps, it was checking off things on the box to see once you feel like you've mastered. I thought that was ingenious. When did that come about?
You want to hear a little bit of not so much a NASA commercial, but NASA history?
Sure, I would love to hear the NASA history.
Okay, the way I understand it, take this with a little grain of salt. Years ago, there was an entity, Jerry Koonsman, who's the highest-ranking principal in NASA, and he was in Northern California.
The
And he
baseball
had a
pitcher?
track. What's that?
The baseball pitcher?
Nope.
Okay.
Jerry owns I think his part-time deal is he owns like a gun store. I've heard. I'm not sure, but
Almost the same.
he was running some track events in Northern California. Well, about the same time, John and Ryan, John Lindsay and Ryan Flatterly were in Southern California, and it's my understanding that they were doing like autocross track days in parking lots where they were going to college, and they may or may not have been roommates, but they were car fans and had a little events going. And the way I understand it is someone said, you ought to meet him and you ought to meet him, and they got together and said, we ought to make a model. And the model was it's a license agreement. There's currently 13 regions, I think, and I think there's one in Hawaii now because they're building a track there. And it's a license agreement that allows a entrepreneur or somebody that knows a fair amount about tracks and operations to put on events, and they offer insurance and kind of infrastructure and overhead and staff in the form of corporate staff. I always think of it like a Subway franchise, and this is corporate. Guys you won't see, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
What that allows you to do is leverage some of the corporate's service offerings, but each region has some flexibility in how they make their Subway sandwich, if you will. And maybe the ones down south, there's more barbecue because it's down south, right? And maybe northeast, there's more, I don't know, clam chowder, right? Right?
Maybe.
That's right.
Every region has different nuances, and depending on the geography and the people that are there, the pockets of drivers in the U.S. are very different regionally. And it just so happens that the NASA Great Lakes region, formerly called NASA Ohio, Indiana, and NASA Midwest, there were 2 regions, and they brought them together, several years ago. And we have sort of that Midwestern, kind of personalities. And we ended up going down a very strong educational system format that has really, instead of the clam chowder and the barbecue, we really went down an education path in the form of a system. And that was largely based on the founder of the current curriculum, Paul King, who was a 40-year educator and was in charge of writing curriculum, teaching and coaching principals how to be principals in the state of Ohio.
Right.
And he said, Eric, I don't really know a lot about what to put in the curriculum, but I can structure. So we got a lot of drivers together and smart folks and some other folks that were in academia that knew how people learned. And we created a learning structure, and we backfilled it with content, with the end goal, to be quite honest with you, to give a driver an option as they progress, that if they wanted to learn how to instruct, that was an option. If they wanted to learn how to go to comp school and wheel-to-wheel racing, that was an option. Not mandatory, option.
Right.
Same way with time trials as well. So we have ended up with a system that basically says, hey, where do you want to go? You want to be a weekend warrior? You want a bucket list one time? You want to play around with this and you don't know? that's okay. Jump on in. The water's fine. And what we've found is that the more people are exposed to the system, the more they want to progress even more and get actually out of the HPD program. And a very large percentage of folks, just in the past 3 years, a very large percentage of folks opt into the wheel-to-wheel racing. And this wasn't our objective, our goal, our secret agenda. It is just what happened. And people are enjoying our curriculum, and they say, "Hey, I want to learn more. Tell me more about this." And you tell them, and you give them some Kool-Aid, and they're like, all of a sudden, they're like, "Hey, help me find a race car. I want to build a race car, Eric. What's this look like?" Does that make sense?
It does. It
That makes
does.
sense. So how do you think NASA Great Lakes HPDE has done so far? So I guess we usually have the good, the bad, and the ugly. So if you have like a story or something of how they've done, is that kind of
Yeah. So in my current position in the industry, I'm very fortunate. I have several instructor certifications from lots and lots of groups. I'm often asked to come in and run classroom, it's very rewarding. And I get to see a lot of different business models. There are the PCA and BMW CCA entities, more structured, very similar, each one of them, but they all have different local chapter nuances depending on the geography. Atlanta, for example, has a whole lot of people, and they can run year-round. That BMW chapter is different than the one here in central Indiana.
Right.
The Hoosier BMW chapter. There's more people there, and there's more people to go to the track, and Road Atlanta's right there. So what I've able to sort of discover and find out is everybody does things differently. And I would say the pluses and minuses, asking about Great Lakes, is we offer an absolute ton of education that is fun and rewarding, but it's at the expense of just pure lap time, because that's an option on the spectrum. If people just want to get laps, no education, and they want a lower price point, that offering is out there. Just like in restaurants, how much do you want to spend and what kind of experience you want? You want a little more fine dining, you want to do a Groupon and spend less and eat more, almost like a
Right.
like a buffet, if you would. Are you even going to have buffets after this COVID thing? I don't know.
Probably. I think buffets are done.
So that's kind of the spectrum,
Right.
and we're on that education part. Really, this is difficult for me to say. I don't like to boast, but we have a very comprehensive educational program, and I can say that because friends in the industry and peers tell me that. Boy, if people you respect are telling you that you're doing it well and you have a strong educational program, you kind of got to acknowledge that. So does that make sense?
It really does. It really does. I know that my experience going in was sitting with my instructor. I got very lucky when I had gone. She had a car, the same car I did. It was a Miata, a little Miata in the 90s.
Best cars ever. Best cars.
I tell you. And it was nice because she understood the vehicle so well. And for the fact that I was there to set a goal for myself, not to run through the whole book, but there were certain things with that car that I wanted to master, that I knew that I wanted to master just to get comfortable behind the wheel, whether it was speed and car control. So if I could just master the car control and know what I was doing with my shifting, then the speed would come. And to go through the book, I didn't realize that going through the book that she was ticking things off in my book at the same time that she knew I was already doing. So I didn't really have to think about that too much. But I thought that the plan itself was genius because it really did take the stress away from learning, because sometimes you go in there and you don't know what you don't know. You don't know the terminologies. You don't know these little nuances.
It can be totally
Right.
foreign and brand new, right?
Right. So this way it was like actually in the book and having it explained out as you were going through. I thought it was genius to kind of just show it, not just do laps.
So I guess I haven't been to as many HPDs as you guys. Do all of them have the books, or is it just? Oh, okay. So just Great Lakes. Is that what makes?
No, I think just the
It has a
NASA.
little book. It's a
Okay.
little book. It's a little book, a bifold book, and it's called a passport. And in
Bill
there
actually
they will
has
have,
one in
yeah,
the
do you
room.
have
right
it on
next
you?
to him.
Do you
Yes,
have
in
it?
the drawer right next to him.
Oh, so it's basically a guide, a menu, a checklist. And every organization has something like that. Some are printed, some are not. Some organizations allow the instructor to instruct as they see fit without really structure, very, I guess, loose structure. And others can be a lot more tight with gates and requirements. The NASA folks came up with Little Passport, which is, like you said, it's a great, it's like a IKEA directions, right? You're going, here's
The little blue book.
Little Blue Book. That's a national book, by the way. It's the same book pretty much in every region. Sometimes a region will change a little bit. For the most part, they're probably 95% the same.
Oh. So how many people usually show up at your event?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a great question. That is dependent on the track length. And a lot of people don't know this, but a longer track like the Corvette Museum track in Bowling Green, which is about 4 miles, and same way with Road America, can put a lot more folks on that track than, say, Mid-Ohio or GingerMan, where we're going next weekend, a little under 2 miles. Typically, there is a ratio of cars to mile that when you have a lower ratio, there's more room, there's less congestion. The highway is not a traffic jam, if you would. And then in the higher run groups where people are more proficient and have skills, you can increase that number of cars per mile. So a typical event, just a DE event for almost all entities, and these are general rules of thumb, there's anywhere from about 15 to 20, this is plus or minus, for an entry level group. So that means about 30, sometimes all the way up to 40 for a 2 mile track. 40's really, 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 really pushing it. So it's usually a little bit less than that. That'd be on the high end of people that are just wanting to get track time. But that many cars, it's hard to get track time. It's more traffic jam. And then on the higher end, you might see upwards of 25 cars per mile on the higher run group. So it's really about 15 per mile to 25 per mile. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It
it does.
So I'm going to get my sucking up in early and often. So I was wondering how NASA Great Lakes got to be the best HPDE we've ever attended. And we've in our group, we've attended 8 different organizers. And there's a reason why we're driving to GingerMan next week from Delaware and Eastern Pennsylvania, because we want the instruction that you guys are able to give. So we just want to know how you got there. Was it, did you steal Ross
Can I answer
Bentley's
that
book?
question with a question?
Sure.
You guys tell me. What's bringing
Oh,
you back?
Bill.
That's a big haul.
Well, there's a safety aspect to driving, and I want to learn as well and efficiently as I can. And you guys aren't too far away. You're far, but not too far away. And it's worth it to me to take that trip and go visit you guys versus getting something that I know isn't the best that I've seen. So that's why I come.
So how did we get here? Is that kind of
Yeah,
how did we end up here?
Yeah, because it didn't just pop up out of the Easter egg. So
It didn't. I was asked to come in by Jay Andrew, who's the regional director and my best friend, and Jay had acquired the both of those NASA regions and melded them in and changed the brand or the name to Great Lakes region. And the Great Lakes region had the same educational system that I came up through and the same instruction that I came up through. And I think I might have mentioned earlier that this was a system that I would ask questions to and would not get answers. Same way with my good friend Dan Fargo, who became chief instructor prior to me. And there is to do, I like to do things and kind of go big in my life. That's kind of my, a couple of my buddies there, my nickname is Big E. So I like to get outside the box and do neat stuff. And when we were pro racing and left NASA to go learn other things from professional coaches and guys I hired, the bells and whistles and the light bulbs went off. And I am a person that likes to collaborate with mentors. And I like to think I'm going to be the best student for that teacher. I try really, really, really hard and get very interactive. And lo and behold, the two of the founding members of the current NASA program were guys on my team, on the pro team, one being Paul King, the career educator, and another being John Taylor, who was also on our team, was Paul's student when Paul was teaching in high school. John was his student, and also I think Paul was like a track coach, if I remember right, and John was as an athlete. Long story short, the three of us sat down when Jay said, "Eric, I need your help. I need to change our Great Lakes HPD system. People are leaving. They're not staying. Customer satisfaction is low. The current leadership was doing a very poor job, to be honest with you. There's a lot of folks in this industry that and instructors that instruct just because it's free track time. Some of them are a very small portion are quite terrible, and they do it strictly for the discount. And they're sadly, that's their selfish motivation. And then on the flip side of that, there's some wonderful people that want to give back and learn. Those are people that like to coach sports. Those are people that like to maybe their scout masters, right? Or their junior achievement folks, right? There's a lot of people that like to give back.
Right.
We made a structure that had great education and a culture that invited those folks that wanted to give back. We peppered it and injected it with as much trainer or instructor education as we could, rather. And this collaborative group of people, now a team, is really the reason of how we got here. I just happened to be in the helm of the ship, saying, "Let's go there north, full steam ahead, full power," right? Jing jing, that kind of deal. And I'm very fortunate with my co-chief instructor, Jeff Henderson, who's been doing this for like 30 years. We've got a lot of talented resources, and it's probably best expressed this way. We're a choir that's had a lot of choir practice and not some individual singers that are just getting together. And a lot of DEs have that component because they might only do 1 or 2 events a year. And we're doing 10, and we've been doing 10 for, well, we didn't, our teams had over quite a few dozen events together working as a team. Yeah.
Right.
Nice.
Did that make sense?
It does. So doing my homework, trying to prepare for a podcast, which, in spite of what our podcast usually sounds like, we do try to prepare. It seemed like you guys had a pretty clear delineation of what your teaching priorities were. I think that it was a foundation of driving skill and technique, and then situational awareness. There may be others on the list, but those were the two that I definitely heard discussed and written about. Is that true? And why would those be what you would prioritize, especially for the new entry level type driver?
Sure. Let's start with the end in mind. And the end in mind, if you remember earlier, the end in mind is to give the customer, the student, the driver, an opportunity to choose different forks in the road, or maybe reserve choosing, right? And we call it declaring majors. So when I come into the classroom as chief instructor, I'll say something like, "Hey guys, I need to let you know that when you get to HPD 3, you have the opportunity to declare your major, and you can answer any of these that you like. You could say, my dad was a drag racer and my brother raced motocross, and I raced mini bikes. You know what? I want to be a racer. I already know I want to be a racer, and we're going to put you on that path. And this isn't a commercial. I'm actually going to get to your question. There might be that boy, that scoutmaster or a teacher or a corporate trainer who likes to instruct. They like to give back. We make a path for them, a door, right? Door number 1, door number 2, door number 3, right? We make a door. Same way with time trials, and same way with people that just want to come to the track and maybe drive their nice car in HPD4. They don't want to race. They don't want to do anything fancy. Just want to blow off some steam and, forget about stuff. So with that in mind, we actually built the program so that if you wanted to go and choose those paths, you had a skill set so that when you got out of HPD3, you could choose any of those paths or not, or defer and say, you know what, I don't know yet. And that's how we created our curriculum. So at the core of that is teamwork and situational awareness. And this is a little bit different than the traditional DE. The traditional DE will be about one student, one instructor, and driving. That traditional format is once that student has the ability to go solo, they're really kind of kicked out of the nest. And I have found professionally, and I can say this with confidence, that that's where the bad habits can become ingrained, or the slightly non-ideal habits can become ingrained. And when you intercept those and keep building and helping again and again and again, it's a series of small continuous improvements so that you're constantly making somebody better and better and better and better and better. We'll expose folks to the teaming environment. It's really easy, quite frankly, to help a driver go fast. Super easy. That's simple. Anybody can do that. It is so all day long. The hard part is helping them understand how to do that in traffic and multitask, and they typically call that situational awareness. So as you advance, you will see this. You're in a group of 4 drivers total. You're on track. You're doing drills. Drills are a wonderful way to learn, and they're safe and they're structured. There's 4 drivers driving as spirited as possible, close to each other, and offline. Offline meaning not the line. It's so easy to teach the line. I can teach anybody the line in a couple sessions. It's quite simple. When you factor in engineered traffic that these 4 have to navigate through, or an additional 4 are coming behind them that have to navigate through, and you do flag drills at the same time, not to say I gotcha, but to say, hey, it's important to always prioritize the flags, just like traffic lights. So imagine, if you will, that we have a button that allows us to change the green light of the traffic light to yellow, not to red where you'd wreck, but to yellow, so that people go, oh, what am I going to do? In traffic, in unique situations, while there's people behind them and people in front of them, and they're conscious, Ohio on a 40 foot wide track at 100 miles an hour, what's going on? That is a skill that you can teach, that can be learned with a series of progressive activities, classroom, and drills. And that's really the end game that our curriculum drives people to. From there, you have your choice of those individual, the Price is Right doors. You want the racing door, the time trial door. And we put a little bit of racing in this program, and a little bit of time trials, and a little bit of instruction to give people the taste of Kool-Aid, right? Hey, here's a little barbecue. Hey, here's a little bit of lobster, right? Here's a little bit of Caribbean flavor, right? We give everybody a little exposure to that, because you don't know. So sometimes people go, wow, no idea I like that. I want to do that. Tell me more.
That's right.
It's not a sales job. It's an exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what we do.
So what's really highly regarded is the interlinking of track driving with the post-track session download. along with the several classroom opportunities. What is the student expectation to promotion?
So yeah, so how do you advance, right? What's
Right.
that look like? Totally different from each organization. And this is the industry-wide. Some folks will say, I'll tell you when you're ready, and there is no checklist per se. It might be the guy likes you, and the industry had a problem with that. They called it social promotion. So the student who laughed at the instructor's jokes, right, and they were best buds, they typically got promoted faster, but didn't have the skills. This is called social promotion. It's a thing. It still happens. It happens less than it did 5 years ago and beyond, but it still happens.
Doesn't that happen everywhere, though?
But I mean, so with that instance, when they kind of get up to level 3, then you're dealing with a hot mess on the track, right?
Yeah, that doesn't happen in our organization. We have a much more rigid, and I don't want this to sound like a NASA Great Lakes commercial, because everybody has a different system, but we have a series of gates, and we tell people on the front end, hey, if your intent was to come here and get signed off to the next run group, we're probably not the right group for you. Nothing can be learned in 2 hours of track time on a weekend. I believe that. You can't do that with golf and have it ingrained long term. You couldn't do that with sewing. You name the sport.
Right.
Trap shooting. Right. You got to do it again and again. Right. Again and again.
Extreme sewing.
You've never seen my
anything.
sewing. My sewing is fantastic.
Anything. Any kind of crafts, right? Music, playing a guitar. You can't do that. Like, here you go. You're good. That is my personal experience, and a lot of folks like to promote folks because it makes them feel good. We share that we're looking for consistency, and we say these are the things that you're going to be evaluated on. It is an open book exam. We're not trying to trick you. Here's all these things. Here, I'm going to give this to you. You can advance at your pace. And some people might be more type A. They'll study, they'll read it. Maybe they have a simulator at home and they drive that track. Others
Raise your hand,
might
Bill.
want to come here. What's that?
Yeah. How you doing?
He's that guy.
So the real answer for the industry is it depends. And the answer for Great Lakes is really consistency. And here are those core competencies that we teach in class. Yeah, it's almost like it's math class, and we're going to do the teachers on the board and say, here's addition, here's subtraction, here's multiplication and division. Here's your homework. You're going to do those 4. Here's the quizzes. You're going to do those 4. And now here's the test. There's no surprises. The student that did the homework and put a little more time and effort and maybe had a natural gift in that advances more quickly than the kid who, my dog ate the homework. Right.
But
that's our philosophy.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's great.
So what are the keys for moving from 1 to 2?
So that's great. The typical progress is about 2 to 4 events, depending on your experience. When from HPD 1 to 2, you'll get anywhere a person with a background of, hey, I've done a couple autocrosses, I've done a couple track days. Eric, where should I start? I say, hey, jump into 1, and if you find that you're that all of these things, because you got to do this and demonstrate consistency. Consistency. In other words, for 3 laps, I want you to demonstrate all these things without some major errors. And you do that with a grain of salt, right? It's not too tough that people don't pass, and it's not easy where you give them a lot of leash, a lot of rope to hang themselves, right? You're looking for consistency. And some folks that have a little bit of background and might pay more attention in class or read the documents prior to arriving, maybe read the syllabus and the presentation prior to arriving, typically will advance more quickly than somebody who is there just exploring. Hey, I want to know what this is about. That might take them, 3, 4, maybe even 5 events. We've got one wonderful customer who took 2 years and that's his own pace. That's not us pushing. That's whatever you're comfortable doing. And when you're ready, you declare that you say, you know what? I think I have all of these. I'm ready for my checkout ride. And so that's kind of how that works. It's a self-paced advancement. That happens also from 3. But for 3, we throw that out the window. 3 is men and the boys or girls and the ladies. It is tough. We're going to throw everything at you. I purposely raise the bar, and I'm kind of that tough football coach for all the right reasons. I'm behind you. I'm going to lift you up, and I'm going to build you up. And I know there's more in you. I know there's more in you. And rather than saying, hey, go ahead, I'm like, no, is that all you got? Is that all you got? And my aim, my objective is to help a driver find more within them. And in the long run, that works better. Because people, in my opinion, in this sport, people want that. They just don't know how to do it. And it's easy as an instructor to say, yeah, you're good, advance.
Right.
And I was that guy. And in the form of, I got advanced. And I was like, I don't want to be advanced. I want to learn.
Right.
There was nobody there to learn. And so staffed our program with some of the best teachers I could find that have an incredible amount of driving experience. Our group 3, I was just talking about group 3. Our group 3 leader, Robin Burnett, just won the national championship in the most competitive class, one of the most competitive class, spec iron. I bet he's got over 100 trophies. He's been driving for 25 years. He's entertaining and enjoyable, and he wants to give back. You know, he wants to be that scoutmaster that has been to Everest and, Antarctica and Sahara and knows all those tricks, and he wants to give it back to people. That's probably a bad analogy. Sorry, Robin. But he enjoys giving back, and he's got a lot of scars and bruises and experiences to help people learn.
Yeah, the one thing that I feel, and I'm the guy who brings the notes in a book pre-written and then takes notes during your classes. So I'm that guy. The one thing that I find is I actually think staying in HPDE 1 because of the higher amount of right seat teaching and the additional classrooms every session, post every session, it's actually attractive to me, and I feel you get more benefit from that than you would from as you progress up. And the other thing that the instructors taught, and I found to be extremely valuable, was they stressed the importance of, hey, if there's a difference between you coming to class and you doing a ride along with your instructor or another level 4, go for the instructor. Go for the ride along, because you'll get more out of that than my class, and you can look at a PowerPoint presentation anytime. But get that and see what a car can really do.
Can I share with you something I learned that I got no dog in the hunt in this, other than I was lucky to have the right staff. There are some professional educators that created our system and currently are inside it, and corporate trainers. John Santiago, Professor or Dr. Santiago, is one of those guys. He's also an amazing driver.
And a former guest, along with Ross Bentley.
Yeah. John's awesome.
His nickname is Yoda by one of our friends, the Three Pedal Mafia. They think he's Yoda because he's just like, he says things that, like Mr. Miyagi, it's like, it doesn't make sense, but it does.
John talks about this is how people learn, and this is the structure and how people learn. And the structure involves talking about concepts A and B in a classroom environment in various interactive capacities, a presentation, a little bit of classroom input and dialogue, some questions. That's followed by, let's stay on A and B. That's followed by, you're now in a car, ready on grid, ready to get on the track. And about 5 or 10 minutes prior to that, you have a focused conversation with the instructor that is supporting A and B. It's the same sheet music, right? It's the same If you're learning how to play guitar, it's what we learned in the class, is what we're practicing in the car on the grid. Then we'll roll out onto the grid and do a series of drills specifically designed to understand and assimilate that lesson of A and B, followed by some driving. Now here's the neat thing that I learned from John. When someone is focused and they're thinking, and their brain is almost overtaxed and working, when they come off of track or when they're done, he calls that the golden moment. And he says, this is where the brain learns. And now your car is parked and the instructor will engage you and say, tell me what just happened here. What did you feel here? The brain is still in that learning mode. And that is the most important time to engage the student. Again, we're talking about A and B, A and B, and A and B. Guess what happens back in the classroom immediately after that? A and B debrief. Hey guys, let's talk about A and B. So there's a lot of cemented depth and focus on A and B until it's time to introduce C and D. And then we repeat. John is very keen on making sure that the topics introduced and the concepts introduced are have the best opportunity to be learned in a system. He's really, really good at that. You can almost insert any kind of topic with his framework and the educational framework that he's learned over many, many, many years, and learn anything. Think about, a guitar lesson, or what we call it, knitting, right? Or macrame, right? Or clay pots, or whatever you're doing, something artistic.
Extreme
that type of format really has a high success rate versus, hey, you guys go be safe out there, and you come back and you don't know if you did it right or not.
Well, it's good because you catch it when it's fresh. And because the longer you're away from that moment, the more just kind of those little details kind of wisp away. And, before you can, it just gives you that moment to focus before it's all gone.
Yeah. 1 to 2 things, maybe 3 maximum. You don't introduce 17 things, right? Keep it really simple and really narrow down and get some proficiency in that topic versus not much proficiency in a lot of topics.
Right.
That happens a lot in our DE industry, mainly because there's typically only 2 classrooms in a lot of DE clubs and chapters. There will be 2 novice or beginner classrooms on Saturday and 2 on Sunday, and you gotta cram a lot of stuff in there, right? There's only 2, and instead of 1 or 2 concepts, A and B, it might be A, B, C, D, E. A lot of people can't learn that way. That's a lot of stuff. That's hard for an instructor to teach A, B, C, D, E in a 25-minute session.
So have there been thoughts on maybe adding classroom sessions for 3 and 4?
We have those after every single on-track event, except for actually, take that back. We didn't have classroom HPD 3 at the end of Mid-Ohio Saturday. And when you know it, 26, 28 people showed up. They just wanting to learn. We're all sitting around, and we might have been having a beer or 2 or a Coke or a water. And we had one of our instructors was a former tire engineer. And he came in and he gave a little tech talk. And a lot of people said, hey, my car's doing this. What does that mean? And a lot of guys that were going racing, it's their opportunity. It's an open forum. So to answer your question, there's download sessions after each run group. Some of those that in HPD4 where you might be an instructor, your student takes precedent, not go to that download session. You'll go right to grid to handle your HPD1 or HPD2, maybe even HPD3 students. We got really good instructors in HPD3. We got We got some pretty good instructors, and it's easy because we got good sheet music and we got a good choir conductor, right? And everybody knows what page of the sheet music, what song we're singing, and what page on the sheet music we're all singing, and what their part is, right? Because they might be woodwinds or brass or percussion, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Does.
I can't take credit for any of that. Those are some other smart guys. I just put in the content. Those guys made the structure, and I'm blessed.
So there's
I'm
somebody
blessed.
there pulling the string behind you. When I was at Mid-Ohio, one of the things that I missed was we had the COVID issue, so we didn't have a classroom. But at least my instructor took extra time and made sure that the downloads went even longer, and almost tried to simulate the classroom without any of the presentation capabilities or the track or anything like that. But the one thing that I found that was really helpful to me, and perhaps, I'm one of those continuous improvement guys, and I love your system. So I'm just trying to, give back a little bit by suggesting perhaps the sessions where I had time to think about, and I even wrote them down, 1 or 2 goals for my next session, because I was mimicking what John Santiago did in the HPDE 1. He used to give us goals to think about and focus on and concentrate on. And I think perhaps adding them to the downloads, because everybody knows what they're good at and what they're not good at, except for the guy that you're worried about or the girl that you're worried about. Perhaps that might be a good point at the end of the download session to say, make sure you have 1 or 2 goals, 3 max, right? But for your next session to focus on and make sure you try to improve and see how you do versus that. And sometimes you may have the same goal the next time, but it gives you something to improve or focus on. I don't know if that's a good idea or a bad idea, but it seemed to help me at least.
That usually happens systematically at the end of the day when people are leaving. I wouldn't be surprised if you heard that or there was an omission.
I did. Yeah.
Was that Derek, Joey, or John?
Joey was
Joey.
tremendous.
Oh, he's awesome.
He was. It was very funny because he was doing a lot of hand gestures for how to track.
Joey, yeah.
And I'm like, Mid-Ohio is flatter than flat. How do you have the thing going up? Like, because he's a fighter pilot, I think, in the past, or an Air Force. But so he's got
Navy.
He's got.
Oh, if I don't correct you, he'll get all over me. He's 100% Navy.
Sorry.
And A6 intruder.
That's right.
Flight instructor. Yeah.
Yeah, but when he was doing his hand gestures, he'd have these things going up and down.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's Mid-Ohio. It's
that way.
Flat. There's no up like this. It was pretty funny. Great guy, though.
So, how well has NASA navigated during the pandemic, and how is that going to look going forward?
That's a great question. We took a different path. I like to think there's a silver lining in COVID, and that it pushes you and stresses you and stretches you in ways that you've never been stressed. Personally, I want to make sure all our customers are safe. And so we took the position, which kind of goes against a lot of what a lot of the DE organizations are doing now. They're putting people back right seat in the car. BMW and PCA are still figuring out how to go about doing that. A little larger organization, right? Has some liability. They want to be safe. NASA gives us some flexibility, NASA corporate, to go about COVID. And granted, you have to factor in the different state laws and or the municipal, local, regional laws. But we made a choice, and I kind of spearheaded this. Wanted to take this COVID and say, let's figure out how to do a different curriculum. Look at the silver lining in this and say, how do we take advantage of this? This is a gift. This is a challenge. And for the rest of the year, we are very likely, unless the medical folks in power that tell us otherwise, are going to continue the same format that we're doing now, for safety and for stretching our organization, our instructors, our staff, and the drivers. We are doing an HPD 1 at GingerMan that will have a lead follow format that has a extremely robust classroom curriculum. So instead of the traditional lead follow, which is you get behind an instructor and you play follow the leader, I'll be honest with you, that gets really old. There's not much you can learn by doing this, right?
Right.
You can, but I take the position of people are a lot smarter in the car than you give them credit for. You just need to help them achieve that. You need to expose them to that. So
Right.
we've created an incredible series of drills and classroom spearheaded by John Santiago. We have instructor training for those drills on a Friday, the Friday before GingerMan. And we've decreased the number of cars on track and decreased the number of students per instructor. Typical ratios in the industry might be about 1 instructor to 3 students, sometimes a little bit more. We're going to stick with 2. We want the higher quality. So it'll be 1 lead instructor who's been through training. Again, John Santiago, A and B in the classroom, right? Hey guys, here's what we're going to do on the track, A and B. We're going to do those drills, A and B. We're going to talk about it in that golden moment afterwards, A and B. And then John's going to debrief and pull it all together, A and B, before he does his C and D. So we're trying to get very far away from follow me, drive the line.
Right.
There'll be a lot of passing. There'll be some things that I can't talk about that are surprises.
Ooh.
We like surprises.
There might even be an opportunity to drive the track backwards on Sunday, possibly.
We haven't even driven the track forward yet.
And all of this is ways to allow people to learn. You structure things in a way to allow people to learn, have dialogue, hear your fellow person in the classroom say, you know what I noticed? And people go, wow, I didn't notice that. Wow, yeah, you're right. So getting that group interaction going with 6 foot plus, safety spaces. So we basically took COVID and said, oh, how do we get better? And the objective is not to have an instructor in the car for safety purposes. And we're kind of close to that. We're not there quite yet. I needed to jump in the car with a couple folks that were having some challenges. That's a kind of a chief instructor role. But for the most part, let's keep people safe. Let's decrease the COVID chance that something might happen, because it's supposed to be fun, right? Worst thing that could happen, a whole bunch of people get ill. So that's our COVID position for NASA Great Lakes.
So how do you think Mid-Ohio went, in your opinion?
I had a blast, just in case you were curious.
I was curious, Bill.
Yeah.
Oh, that was
We
to him.
did a lot
Sorry.
of preparation for a non-traditional no right seat instruction. We changed the drills and the format quite a bit. The one thing that I found in the industry, having a lot of friends and peers in similar levels, above and below, is there was so much pent-up driver excitement and interest that everyone feels that yes, you got it, right?
That is why we did not go to New Jersey.
People came excited. They wanted to see the opening of Star Wars, right?
That's
They
right.
wanted to go to the roller coaster, right? They were excited. So I think that had a lot to do, and some pretty weather, a lot to do with a really successful event. I've heard many entities, Chin, Hooked on Driving, BMW event, a PCA event, even though they've only done a couple, because they pushed a lot of the February, March, April, May stuff back. Almost everybody's first event had a lot of customer interest, excitement, and attendance. A lot of attendance.
Yep.
I think we got some of that wave too. Bill,
I
there's
was
a lot of smiling
waving.
people. Yeah.
I was waving the whole time.
He was in that way.
He was jumping up and down. He was like hands in his mouth, just so excited.
I forgot to take pictures for
I
everybody.
mean, it's good that people are excited, but it does create a
little bit of havoc.
Some hazards. It can create a little bit.
Yes, it's true. It's always the first race of the season where most of the chaos happens.
Yeah.
So, what is your prognosis for GingerMan? And will you run an HPDE 1?
Yes, we are. We're going to do the lead follow format. We're going to limit that to under 20 drivers. I think we have 19 signed up right now. We tried to cap it at 15, but before we capped it, 4 more people signed up. So we want that low. GingerMan's not very long. And when you do 20 drivers and you factor in the lead follow instructor, there's an additional 10 cars on track. Is this making sense?
Yep.
Now you're at 30 cars on track. You get too many cars on track and there's a little bit of a traffic jam. Stuff's supposed to be fun. It's not about making money and cramming as many people on track as possible. People don't like that. So we're going to keep that number as low as possible. And if some folks fall off, we're not going to add them back from the wait list. We're pretty big waitlisted right now. We're also doing that lower number for HPD2. We're keeping that number lower. And HPD3 is really good in traffic. So they'll probably have about 40, and HPD4 will probably have about 35. HPD3 is usually the biggest group. And we make them stay in there longer. It's typically anywhere from 1 season going to almost every event, or 2 years before someone goes from 3 to 4. Again, consistency. Make them do 3 different tracks. Any person that only knows how to drive one track really doesn't know how to drive. We call them one-track wonders. You've got to go to a different track, and you guys know this because it stretches your mind and you learn.
Everyone's different.
That's where you learn.
It is.
I encourage that to everyone. Get out, make a bucket list. Every year, do a bucket list. Go somewhere. Have some fun. Take your spouse. Right?
That's what we started doing. We always have one away.
What's that?
We always have one away trip. So our away trip this year is GingerMan.
So
Last year was Portland.
Yep.
Portland.
What? Are you serious?
Oregon. Went to Oregon.
Wow.
Well, it wasn't HPD. That was
Lucky dog race.
That was Lucky Dog, yeah.
And then we're in PA, and I think for us, Bill and I just took a trip out to Laguna Seca, and then we had done Atlanta since we're in the Northeast, basically. So we always do one away.
That's how we grow.
We do too. We have a thing. Andrew Rains, a good friend of mine, is involved in one of the equity holders, and just a super great guy with Apex Pro, little Apex Pro data acquisition device. And Andrew and I started doing what we call Intro to Pro Coaching, and we did Road Atlanta last year, limited it to 10 drivers, 10 customers, if you would. Had a great support staff. My good friend Mike Job, who runs HPD4, was down there. We bought a video crew down there, and we went, we did Road Atlanta. That was a NASA Southeast event, and we basically treated 10 drivers as if they were on a pro team, and we went through the various wickets of what that looks like. We'll be doing that again this year at Barber, so very similar to what you guys going to Laguna Seca or Portland as an example. We'll be doing that in Barber on Halloween weekend, and it just happens to be a chin event. So doing exactly the same thing you're doing, but weaving it in with some education to allow people to do this, right? And then you get 10 people and you do a bunch of cost splitting, right? The per unit cost gets pretty low. Stay at the same hotel, go out to dinner together. Everybody gets to meet, get some fun people that like other folks, kind of screen some folks so they're fun to be around, have the right attitude. So yes, it's a bucket list. Most port. Got to add most port to your bucket list. Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
We decided to do something just a little bit. So, we really can't travel too far because of the pandemic right now. But why don't we go next door? And that's when GingerMan came up, into the next circuit. But so do you think you guys will be holding class? You said you are going to be holding classroom sessions for GingerMan. Are they going to be inside rooms or outside in the garages?
GingerMan is not real fancy. It is not a 5-star venue. GingerMan is very much, get on the internet and take a couple looks and you're like, is this it? It's got one big classroom. There's not a lot of infrastructure.
Outhouses or
no, it's got some bathrooms. I don't know if it's got some bathrooms with some showers. It's the most likely it's most like a campground.
Okay.
And if you treat it like that and say, I'm here to have fun, maybe even have a campfire at night, right? And sit around and do some s'mores. It literally has that kind of feel, and we run it in we call it the longest day event. You know, the sun stays out for a long time, so
Yep.
so it's kind of fun. And
Mhm.
the city of South Haven is on the water, and it's real pretty. If you go into town to have some dinner,
Nice.
there's some neat stuff going on. It's like a recreational kind of destination. So not a lot of frills, not a lot of buildings, awful lot of fun. But the number one thing it has is the ability to, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to proudly say this, of all the tracks we go to, GingerMan has the greatest risk reward. And that is, if you were to go off track, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to kill a couple grasshoppers and get up some dried tall grass in your radiator.
Oh, I like this track already.
And I really like that because I'll encourage people, and I'm going to say this. I'm going to say
you can push yourself.
Exactly. So you know what? There is a couple particular corners, and if you happen to drop a tire off the track, or 2 or 4, I'm high-fiving you, and I'm going, "What'd you learn?" As opposed to, "Don't ever do that again. You're in trouble." In fact, if somebody wants to advance and they want to be an instructor, they're wanting to go to time trials, or they're wanting to go to racing, and they're in our HPD3 group or HPD4, and they don't do that, I tell them they're not pushing hard enough. Because again, there's one particular corner that has an incredible amount of reward. If you mess up, you go off in the grass. But if you get it right, you just make up so much time. And so it's very low risk, high reward. And you got to take advantage of those, as opposed to mid-Ohio in the rain. Don't want to do that.
No.
Do you have any?
Autobahn don't want to do that.
While we're on that subject.
Do you have any track driving tips for GingerMan?
Trek, like TREK?
Yes.
GingerMan is an Alan Wilson designed track. That means it has a lot of decreasing radiuses. Carolina Motorsports Park, I think both the New Jersey tracks are Alan Wilson. Miller, Putnam Park, CMP, Barber. Barber's a little bit different. It was laid out as a motorcycle track. But Alan Wilson track has a lot of heavy brake and tighter turns. Some people, it doesn't really flow as much per se, so it has a lot of more braking back to gas. So for Trek, you got to save your brakes because it's 4 hours. The surface is not too bad on tires, nor is it super grippy and smooth. It's sort of a medium tire wearing surface. It's wide open visually, so you can almost see the entire track. There's a couple spots where cars will disappear, but they come back relatively quickly. So from a Trek perspective, the crew has good radio communications throughout pretty much the whole track.
Yep.
Road Atlanta, VIR, Road America, you got spots where you're dead, right? You got nothing. And GingerMan is almost a straight line of sight, and it's flat. So that's good there. And you got to go into town if you want to get anything. So there's not a lot of resources there. There's not a big track store that has emergency supplies and things like that.
How far is town?
15 minutes.
Okay.
15
That's not
minutes
bad.
to the west. Yeah, where all the hotels are. There's a Walmart there and whatnot. There's a great,
we're camping. We're pulling up trailers and all. We are
great
self-sufficient.
microbrewery. There's a
What's
great
that?
microbrewery about 12 minutes west that everybody goes to.
We'll be there too.
Yeah, everybody goes there. I apologize. 3 sisters, 3 blondes, 3 sisters maybe. Something like that. 3 blonde
somebody.
sisters.
3 something.
Great outside, and I'm sure they're super COVID opened up. And this time of the year, where it's a little bit farther north, you get the lake effect, nice cool breeze because it's right there on the water. Really super nice outside, especially in South Haven where it's close to the water and the breeze.
Awesome.
So that answered your Trek question?
It does. And Vicky turned off her mic.
Sorry.
Bill, I'm just digging your background. That's awesome.
We
Bill?
make up for our driving skill with I don't know. There's nothing to make up for our driving skill.
So anyway, we like to do a segment called Fast and Furious Storytime Questions.
Okay, I'm scared.
Yes, and these are
Scared.
fun questions to get to know you personally.
It's
Mm.
fun.
It
I
is
like
fun.
it.
Fun for us.
Yeah, we'll make you think a little bit. Okay,
Yeah.
Jennifer,
Okay.
you want to start
So-
them up?
Is this
I'll
is
start
this
'em
like
up.
a speed round kind of thing?
Yeah,
or-
kind of. Well, you just
Kind of. You
answer
can think
and we'll
on it a
keep
little
going.
bit, but not too long.
Okay.
Okay, so what was your very first car ever? See, this easy questions.
Triumph Spitfire, bright orange. The next morning, it didn't start. It had a flat tire and it was out of gas.
So it's just
Okay.
like all the other Triumph Spitfires.
So, what was your worst car ever? That sounded almost no.
Oh, that's an awesome car.
Pontiac 6000. It leaked oil, and my friends called it the Valdez. Remember that ship
Yeah.
that crashed in
Uh-huh.
Alaska? So my friends called it the Valdez, and I wasn't allowed to park in her driveway because it leaked oil.
Nice.
Oof.
So she was the Valdez.
And what is the car from your family that sticks out in your mind? Your childhood car.
Oh wow, that's a great question. Sorry, I'm trying to go real quick here.
Okay.
Mom had this little 4-door Chevette with the 4-speed.
See?
Oh,
It's
you
the
like
first thing
vets
that
from
pops
way
to your
back.
mind.
No,
Yep.
Chevette.
I'm well aware. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. We also had a 73 Pinto wagon.
Yes,
no.
the
That
Pinto.
was green with wood on the side.
Yay,
I thank
Pinto.
you not. It was not a pretty car. Green wagon, woody panels.
I gotta tell you,
Nice.
after 10 years, none of them look pretty good.
That was
All
their
right.
first car too. It was a
Yep.
Pinto.
So what's the one thing that no one knows about you that would surprise them?
Oh wow. Ooh.
That he's an open book.
No, I got to be careful here.
Would you rather us go to automatic or stick?
That nobody knows about.
Or few?
Look, let me give me a think. Time
Okay.
to think on that
We'll
one.
come back to that
Intelligence.
one.
Automatic or stick?
Automatic dual clutch. Dual
Ooh.
clutch. Dual
Ooh,
clutch.
Look at you.
Okay.
Nothing
Okay.
better than a dual clutch. That new Porsche PDK transmission is the best production transmission ever made. Hands down.
Mind reader.
Nice.
That's a mind reader. It is.
So who's your favorite race car driver?
Oh wow.
It could be of
Um,
all time.
All time?
Do you want us to have Bill mute?
No. No. I
It's
don't
okay.
have.
I don't think he's
Might
going to
be
say
right
me.
here. This one. So this is my favorite. I don't know if you can see this or not. This is my favorite trophy. It's the 2010 Jim Cook Award, and this was when we were in World Challenge, and I didn't know this award existed, and it's my most favorite trophy, and they were giving it at the banquet at the end of the year in Salt Lake City, and my idol was up on stage and he was announcing the award, and they said Eric Meyer, and I started crying. And
Oh,
because my idol gave it to me, and the guy I really respect the most, and that's Andy Pilgrim.
oh,
So
nice.
the answer is Andy Pilgrim, and when you know it, I'm kind of in the same club with him, with some other great folks like Randy Popst and
Nice.
Peter Cunningham.
Oh, Randy.
And, it's my favorite award,
his-
and the answer is Andy Pilgrim.
Okay.
See,
We
my
have
my
we have
response
history
would have
with
been,
Randy Popst.
yeah, we do. See, my response would have been, wow, there's another Eric Meyer here. But, you know, go ahead.
All right.
Sorry.
So, front wheel, rear wheel, or 4-wheel driver, doesn't matter.
Rear wheel front engine.
There you go.
There we go.
Okay. What's the car that got away?
Oh wow. Wow. 64
regrets.
Cutlass convertible.
Oh, what was it?
64 Cutlass convertible. It was my second car. A lot of memories. Oh, you know that question you asked about what people don't know about you?
Yes.
Yeah. Here we go.
Yeah,
You know how many
64 Cutlass.
kegs? Do you know how many kegs of beer you can get in a 64 Cutlass convertible? Yeah.
Apparently you do.
I'm gonna stop right there.
Stop right there.
Best car ever. He cried when that one got sold.
We got 5 in there.
5. Wow.
Yeah.
So what is the fastest you've ever driven a car? What car, where, and when?
That Mercedes-Benz that I learned on had a juiced up motor, and she went 193 on the Speedo.
Wow.
And that's when I realized that I was in the wrong car, because anything could happen, and they're just not safe enough.
Mhm.
And that's when I switched, and my next car after that was a Miata.
Nice.
That did
I
not
owned
do
5 of those, 5
190.
Miatas and 6 RX-8s. I'm a big
Nice.
Mazda fan, always true blue Mazda fan.
Mhm.
Nice.
Sweet.
So, what is your dream car for the road, and what's your dream car for the race?
I like the other option.
Okay,
give
okay.
you-
Or if you prefer, what would be your desert island top 5? And of course, the island has a track.
Oh, top 5. So it's got to be a MX-5 Cup car, a ND chassis, and an NC chassis, if you know what those are. Both the ND and NC. I probably have a NC with a 2.5 liter swap, and the trick intake, and some grip, because it's an amazing car. Oh my God, that is so fun.
The only one we haven't driven.
What's that?
That's the only Miata we haven't driven.
Oh, they're just beautiful. Owned a couple of those.
Can I get one, Vicky?
BMW
cars to get rid of.
M4 GT4. I probably have one of those, and a spec iron Mustang. That's
Ooh.
5. And my old Mazda RX-8 that blew motors right and left. That was so fun.
So the Cutlass didn't make your island?
No.
So
It's
what is your
sitting at
dream?
pit with all of those kegs?
What's that?
It's sitting in pit row with all the kegs in it, just waiting for him.
Oh.
Right. So what is your dream car for a race that you would like to build from?
The one I'm driving now, BMW M4.
It's a very pretty car.
Ooh.
Yeah, she's getting to. I'm trying to put race suspension underneath it, but she's 4,000 pounds, which is an awful lot, and you got to have one setup that kind of works for everything. You get at high levels of racing, and you got to drive whatever cars you're underneath you, but when you get at high levels, you're doing a lot of tuning. You're changing camber, you're changing toe, you're changing spring rates, you're changing sway bars, you're changing ride height, you're changing rake, cross weight, and you do all those tiny little things to find tenths and even hundredths. So I like doing that, but you can't do that if you just drive a car to and from the track. You kind of pick a setup and you go with it.
Right.
So people either love or hate this question. It's either really easy to answer or really hard to answer. If you could only drive and race cars from one decade in the past, what decade would you choose?
Wow. Do I get to do it all over again?
Do anything you want, sir. It's your podcast.
I would like to do the same exact time frame that I raced, but with all the stuff that I know right now. And all the
Nice.
stuff that I'm trying to give back to people, to the young Erics, and the people that are learning. A lot of folks I know like to do that. That's their motivation. I've learned a lot. When you blow over 80 motors, 80 motors, our wonderful Mazda RX-8s. At one time we had 10 motors in rotation. Had 2-car team. We had 2 engines in the cars, 2 in the trailer, 2 cars in the trailer, and 4 being built back at the shop. You learn a lot. So there was a lot of lessons that you can give back to people about spares and preparation, and travel with the windshield, because you crack a windshield, Safe Light might not have that in stock. And if you want to make the race and you just spent 30 grand and flew in 6 people to help you crew, and you can't enter the race because of a freaking $300 windshield, right?
Yeah.
You learn to, and a windshield gasket.
Yeah.
You need a windshield gasket to go with the windshield.
You do.
So Every time you do something, you learn, and I like to give it back.
Okay.
Poorly welded sheet grid.
We raced. I broke a windshield and we used expanded steel sheet.
Because they couldn't get a windshield.
Yeah, we found one and then they broke it when they were taking it out, so we had to go with what we could. So,
What's expanded steel? What?
It's basically like open steel mesh.
A great.
Yeah. Yeah. If you had any cheese, we would take care of that as an opportunity as well. So.
And why did the windshield break?
I was helping the team. Hood pins were optional. Yes.
Great lesson, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Never going to happen ever again, is it?
Never going to happen again.
No, we have catches and hood pins now. We're double dipping. All right. Vicky's hated question of the day. So, Jeremy, Hammond, May, Chris, Matt, other?
What?
Okay.
Exactly.
It's a Top Gear thing. You either get it or you don't get it, and half of our people don't get it. I still think it's hilarious. So, anyway.
Oh, I don't watch a lot of TV.
No worries.
I know what you're talking about now.
Yep. Don't worry. It's part of the fun. All right, ladies.
Guys, super fun.
Where would your ultimate road trip be from and to, and in what car?
Oldsmobile Cutlass, 4 kegs.
I haven't been to Alaska yet because you kind of got to stay on the continent, right?
Yeah.
So I would like to drive to Alaska, and I'd probably pick. I used to have a couple old Suburbans, trusty Suburbans. We had put my old Chocolate Lab Zeke in there. So I'd probably
Ice racing.
do a
Ice
Suburban.
racing.
Just jump in and go, right? Have some cold air conditioning and heated seats and some iTunes and just
There's
go.
a great podcast you could listen to the whole way. I'm just saying.
All
It's
right.
not
So
ours,
what car would you love to switch into that you are currently racing or raced in the past against, and on what racetrack? And that can go for any of your friends that show up at the HPDE.
I would like to take the car we just won a Trek race in with my great Jason, Robin, Jeff, and myself, the one at Mid-Ohio on Friday that we're going to be running on Friday at GingerMan. I like to take that car and go run it at VIR. I call VIR my home track. I used to go there about 8 times a year because you can almost run it year round. It's usually January. It's a little off, but we would go there quite a bit and test and drive there. So VIR with a spec iron car, a gold one, number 20. You'll see it next weekend.
Awesome.
Weekend and a half.
Nice.
All right, your favorite car, movie, or car from a movie of all time?
Wow.
You can do this.
I'm looking at my clock because in 2 minutes,
2 minutes.
We only have 2 questions left.
Okay. Favorite movie or favorite car in a movie? Gosh, I think I got to go with Herbie the Love Bug. Right?
Nice.
Oh,
I mean, that was like what?
that says a lot about you. All right, this is going to be the last question because you've already told us your favorite track, VIR, right?
Guy, I really it's most sport. VIR and sport are like that, but most sport there's something special about that. It's got to go there. Got to go there.
Right.
Excellent.
Okay, what car would you want to wipe away from history?
This
that's
3
funny.
Series. I had
I
a
love that one.
325e BMW, and man, it just kept having problems after problems after problems. And I was a young kid, and I thought I could afford it. I was in college, and everything was twice as much as it should have been.
That's awesome. Thank you, sir.
So-
What? Go ahead, Jen.
I said, no, that's it.
Oh,
You did good.
You
Eric,
did
really
great.
good. Right on,
Super
on
fun.
top of those. Right on top of those.
great.
And we learned so much about you.
I feel like I know you so well.
Let's pick this back up in GingerMan in a week and a half. Sound like a
All
deal?
Sounds great.
I
Be
got
there.
the first round at the 3 blondes, the 3 sisters, 3 blonde sisters.
I'll drive because I don't
Three
drink, so
something.
we're good.
Yeah.
They got excellent root beer. I like
Even
their beer.
oh, now I'm in trouble.
He's
Got
in.
like 15 pounds of sugar in it.
He's our designated driver.
That's right.
Thank you so much for coming
Thank
on.
you.
We've really, really enjoyed this interview.
Let's pick it up in about 10 days here. Sound like a plan?
10
Sounds
days sounds
great.
Like a great
Awesome.
plan.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
All right,
you.
well, thank you for coming on.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Phil.
Bye.
Bye.
Dominating with Dawson.
Ben, I remember when I was first learning to drive, and I was in this I believe it was a Dodge K car. It was awesome. In driver's training, driver's ed with the gym teacher and the football coach, which was one of the same. And he's got the car, and I'm driving, and it's an automatic and no big deal. And I touched my left foot to the brake pedal, and he jammed on his pedal, pulling us over on a highway to a stop, and says, "Never do that again." And I look at him.
Really?
And I say, never. Yeah, I say, never hit the brake pedal on a highway when I'm driving, because the guy behind us almost killed us. But perhaps there's a second opinion on left foot braking.
So that really happened to you?
Really happened.
Ah, that's crazy.
It was awesome. It was great.
Yeah, there's so much to say about left foot braking and reasons to do it or not to do it. So left foot braking is choosing to apply the brakes with your left foot rather than the typical standard right foot that you would usually do, on the streetcar or something like that. So left foot braking means you just jump on there, and instead of so you just lift your right foot off the throttle and you just slap your left foot down on the brake. Hopefully not at the same time. Some folks kind of blend them, coming and going a little bit. But for the most part, it should be separate inputs.
Is it better or worse for certain things?
I like to do it anytime that I'm not shifting gears. So if my left foot is not going to be involved with the clutch at all, and I can just use it interchangeably as I would have used my right foot, I will definitely use my left foot. I like it because it gives me a little bit of flexibility, especially in amateur endurance racing traffic, where you just kind of never know what's headed your way. You never know when you might need to just pop your foot on the brake. I like having the flexibility to just have my foot right there all the time to sort of help me manage traffic and be a little bit more versatile and quick to react to what's happening in traffic. So I like that. It's a little bit of free insurance for me.
Okay. Most people I know who are relatively new, maybe even racing for a little bit, their left foot is used to doing one of two things: standing on the dead pedal and keeping them stable, or pushing the clutch, neither of which require a whole lot of finesse as opposed to a brake pedal. So
where do you learn it, right?
Yeah.
That's the $1 million question, because also, with you're trying to learn how to use the brakes with the same sort of forces that you would use to slow the car from 110 miles an hour or 90 miles an hour down to 30 on the racetrack or something like that. So we're talking about applying, putting a bunch of leg down on the pedal. So it's different than what you're going to be doing on the street for the most part. If you're slowing down to come into your neighborhood, you're just touching the brakes a little bit and turning in. So it's good training. You can sort of teach yourself how to do it on the street a little bit, but it's not going to be the exact same magnitude of the input that you're going to do on the track. But yeah, you want to learn. I taught myself the mechanics of it on the street, and the very first time I tried it, I stood whatever car I was driving, I stood it up on its nose, and I'm sure I've scared half the traffic around me. But that's how I started learning how to do it, and getting a feel for it, just a very basic feel for it, was to try to learn how to discipline myself to do it on the street. But I also try to stick everywhere. Every car I've ever had has always been a stick, so it kind of helps me learn how to do it in the right rhythm.
So much like the semi-famous story at Thompson, where the guy walks up to me and goes, "This is where you need to start to learn how to heel and toe downshift. This is also the best thing to do, is just go out and pick a race and start left foot braking." Is this what you'd recommend?
No. I at least my experience and sort of the anecdotal experience I hear from other people is that they usually sort of start touching on it on the street just to sort of get the mechanics of it down, and then they go from there.
So is this a nice to have, or is this a requirement, or is this a use it? It's probably better, but you don't have to do it, or what do you think?
That's a great question. There are plenty of championship level drivers. Alex Zanardi was never a left foot breaker. The famous Alex Zanardi, who dominated that race at Laguna Seca and Cardin, was pretty good in Formula One. But one of the reasons he wasn't great in Formula One is those cars are designed for left foot braking, and he just kind of never caught on to it. So he could never really adapt to it. But in general, the kind of level we're talking about, it doesn't matter really one bit. I mean, there are plenty of guys you can watch, plenty of good spec Miata championship level like SCCA runoffs videos where there are guys who just never heel toe, they never left foot brake and that sort of thing, and they do fine. But so it's not necessarily something that's going to add take away from your lap time, but it definitely gives me more control over what's happening with the car and balancing the car on sort of, I think, a finer edge than if I was trying to have to move my right foot from pedal to pedal. I like having the versatility and just the extra little bit of control that I get from left foot braking. And I think it helps me get on the brakes faster into a turn where I'm not going to be not active with the clutch. I can really hit the brake exactly where I want to. Where it's a little bit tougher to swing my foot from the throttle position to the brake position if I'm only using my right foot.
So it's really a function of just a little less coast.
I think so. Yeah, I think it gives me a little less coast, and I get to be a little bit crisper with my inputs, and I feel like I'm more in control. But on the flip side of that, there are plenty of folks who could beat me on track who aren't doing it. So I don't know that it's exclusive to speed, but it's exclusive to my comfort and what I'm used to.
Okay, so nice to do, not required, but something you should probably be working on.
That's my feeling. I think it's personal for everybody, and it's one of those things where I think if you were working your way up through driving development, and maybe say you've gotten pretty good at hitting your marks on track and car placement, and your timing is pretty good with where you're starting to brake and that sort of thing, you're getting to an advanced level of driving, and I'd say this is something that I would approach after I've gotten rev matching and heel toe shifting down. This is something I would do after that. But also, like I said, it's not required now. And also the other side of that is maybe you work your way up, you're really smooth with rev match, and you're putting the car where it needs to be all the time. You feel like you're using the available grip that you can get out of the car, and then you decide to throw left foot braking in there, and you think, this is where I need to blast over my plateau where I am. I need left foot braking to get me there. But then you try it, and you're like, this sucks, I can't do it, and you never get a good feel for it. Bail on it. It's not going to make it any faster, really. But don't hinge your whole track racing progression on left foot braking. It's great to have if you can get it down. If it's not, move on.
Right, and like you said, I've heard of some people who do this professionally, and they just don't get it, or they don't like it, or they don't have the touch that they're comfortable.
It doesn't work for them. Yeah, it doesn't work for them for whatever reason. But still, if they go out there and run faster laps than the people that are doing it, or they run faster laps than me while I'm trying to do it, then it's working for them. So it's all about the numbers, and I mean, I think left foot braking is a comfort thing and something that I can't imagine racing without, but you can.
So it's not the cake. It might not even be the icing, but it's definitely a sprinkle.
Yeah, buddy.
All right, very well. I'm going to go have me a cupcake. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast source. If you have any questions or topics you would like for us to cover, please feel free to let us know at www.garageheroesintraining.com. On Instagram, we are Garage Heroes in Training. Facebook, we are Garage Heroes IT. If you would really like to help us out, please leave us a rating and review of our podcast app of your choice, Apple's podcast app, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or whatever podcast app you use, and we will address any questions that you leave on the review. We'd like to thank our guest, Eric Myers. He was so much fun to have on. Gosh, I love that guy now. We hope to see you out there racing with us. Thanks again.
Bye. Game over.
Game over.
Hello, sir.
Howdy, howdy.
Hey, hey, look at you with the hardware back there.
Oh, look at you. Got the fancy background.
Yeah, that's covering up all my trophies. No, not really.
How's the audio? Check test, check test.
All right, we're one person away. We're always one person away, but that's okay. I'm going to make fun of her. Since she's my wife, it only gets me to sleep in the bathtub.
Yes.
So you have the Wilson sisters, not the two from Hart, but you know, it's what I got. I think Eric's got the best background of anybody we've ever had on
I
the
really do
podcast.
think so.
I know. It's very professional-ish.
Yeah, all three of us have all the trophies we've won in racing behind us.
I do about.
That's not true.
I don't know,
That
five of
one
these-
Lemons trophy that you have.
Oh, that's right. We got Screwed Award. Yeah, we did win that.
Yeah, I got screwed award.
Yes. what was
enough
that?
enough about our badness. Okay. All right. Thank you for coming on, Eric.
Happy to be here. Excited.
Yeah, it should be fun.